The airport was buzzing, the kind of busy where people rushed without looking up, dragging their bags like they were trying to outrun something. Announcements echoed through the halls. Gate numbers changed. Delays flashed across screens. In the middle of it all, at gate 17 billion, something strange was about to happen. Keanu Reeves walked through the terminal quietly, head down, hoodie up, trying not to be noticed. He was used to hiding in plain sight, not because he was afraid of fans, but because he preferred peace. This was supposed to be a simple trip, just a commercial flight to Vancouver. No private jets, no assistants. Just him, his backpack, and a small book tucked under his arm. As he reached his gate, he noticed an elderly woman struggling with her suitcase. No one stopped. Everyone kept walking. Keanu stepped over without saying a word, lifted the suitcase gently, and placed it near her seat. She smiled up at him, her face tired but kind. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu smiled back. "Safe travels." He moved on. At the boarding gate, the airline agent called first-class passengers. Keanu waited until the line shortened. When he walked up, the agent looked at him, then back at her screen, and her eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Reeves?" she whispered. "I didn't know you were flying today." Keanu smiled politely. "It's all good. Just one seat." She nodded and handed him the boarding pass. A window seat." Keanu nodded again and walked toward the jet bridge. On board, the cabin was still half empty. A few business travelers had settled into their seats. One man already had his laptop open. Another woman had kicked off her shoes and was scrolling through her phone. When Keanu reached his seat he stopped. Someone was sitting there. A woman, maybe in her late 40s, early 50s, designer sunglasses on indoors. Loud perfume. Expensive handbag resting where his backpack should go. She looked up at him slowly, chewing gum with her mouth open. Keanu paused. Smiled softly. "Hi, I believe that's my seat." The woman looked him up and down. "What's your name?" "Keanu," she laughed. "Oh, cute. No, I think you're confused. This is my seat, see?" She held up her ticket lazily. 1A. Keanu tilted his head. "May I see that?" She frowned but handed it to him. He looked at the boarding pass. It said 3C economy, middle seat. He looked back at her kindly. "This is 1A. She snatched the ticket back. "So what? It's just a seat. You're a grown man. You can sit anywhere." "I'm not moving. I got on first, and I like this spot." Keanu took a deep breath. "I understand, but this is my assigned seat." A flight attendant walked over quickly. "Is there a problem here?" Keanu shook his head. "No problem, just a little mix-up." The woman interrupted. "I'm not moving. I already settled in. And look, he's being difficult." "Who even is this guy?" Keanu gently smiled. "I'll let you two sort it out. I can wait." He stepped aside calmly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. But the other passengers had noticed now. Murmurs started. The attendant pulled the woman aside. They whispered for a while, and then something unexpected happened. The woman snapped. "Do you know who I am? I'm a platinum member. I fly this airline every week. I don't sit in economy, ever." The flight attendant, now flustered, replied, "Ma'am, please lower your voice." But it was too late. People nearby were recording. Keanu stood still, watching quietly. His face remained soft, but his eyes had changed. Not angry, not scared, just disappointed. Another flight attendant arrived and spoke to the captain. Moments later, the plane doors stayed open. And then, an announcement, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. There is a seating issue we must resolve before departure." Passengers groaned. Some looked over at the woman in 1A. She folded her arms, smug and unmoved. The captain himself came out of the cockpit. He walked down the aisle, calm and firm. He looked at the woman. Ma'am, we're going to ask you one more time. Please, take your assigned seat in economy. If not, we will need to remove you from the aircraft, she gasped. You can't do that. The captain nodded slowly. We can, and we will. She turned to Keanu. This is your fault. I hope you're happy. Keanu didn't speak. He just took a step back, letting the crew handle it. As she was escorted off the plane, passengers clapped quietly, not loud. Not mocking, just relieved, but something strange happened. Next, the gate agent reboarded and whispered to the captain. He turned to the passengers. Due to the disruption and delay, we've been informed there's a maintenance issue that needs to be checked before takeoff. Please remain seated while we investigate. Groans again. People looked at each other, annoyed. Keanu took his seat finally. Elderly woman he had helped earlier passed him as she boarded. She stopped, touched his shoulder gently, and whispered, "That was very graceful." He smiled, "Thank you." Minutes passed. Then an hour. The captain came back on the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we regret to inform you that this flight has been grounded. We will need to deplane." Shock spread across the cabin. People stood, complained, some cursed under their breath, but no one blamed Keanu. Because the truth was, something about that woman's behavior had triggered more than just discomfort. Her ID had flagged a system check, and what they found was something no one expected. Not even Keanu. But that truth was about to come out in part 2. The passengers began to gather their belongings, still confused, still whispering about the announcement. Some thought it was just bad luck. Others blamed delays, winter weather, anything but the truth that hadn't yet surfaced. They had no idea that a simple seating dispute had uncovered something far deeper. Keanu stood up slowly and helped a young couple with their baby collect their bags. They had been sitting nearby in row 2 and were clearly stressed. The baby cried softly, unsettled by the sudden stop. "Thank you," the young father said. "We weren't ready for this." Keanu gave a kind nod. None of us were. As the passengers began to file out of the plane, a group of airline security officers entered. They weren't just standard flight staff. These were trained personnel with earpieces and serious expressions. They moved to the front of the cabin, asked the captain a few questions, then glanced over at Keanu. He stepped forward. "Is everything okay?" One officer nodded. "Mr. Reeves, we appreciate your patience. May we speak with you privately for just a moment?" Keanu looked concerned, but not alarmed. "Of course." They led him down the jet bridge, past the crowd now forming at the gate area. Whispers traveled like sparks on dry grass. Someone asked, "What's going on?" Another said, "I think it's about that woman from earlier." And it was. Inside a quiet office near the gate, the officers explained. "We ran the credentials of the woman who refused to leave your seat," one said. "Standard policy after any passenger is removed," Keanu nodded. "And?" The lead officer continued. "The ID she used does not match any known traveler in our system. And the number on her boarding pass ... was fake." Keanu's eyebrows lifted slightly. "She snuck on the plane?" "Yes," the officer said. "And that's not all. She's done this before." Keanu leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The officer pulled out a small folder. Inside were printed reports from other flights. Similar incidents. Passengers removed, complaints filed. In one case, a flight was delayed 4 hours. The woman always used different names, but the same tactics charm her way past the gate. Pick a first-class seat and cause a scene if challenged. Keanu asked the one question on his mind. "Why?" The officer hesitated. "We believe she was testing flight crews. Or more precisely, looking for something, or someone." Keanu narrowed his eyes. "Me?" The officer nodded slowly. "Possibly, or someone like you, a public figure. We've seen similar attempts to get close to celebrities. Sometimes it's about money. Sometimes something darker. Keanu rubbed his forehead. I just thought she was entitled, the officer shrugged. She might be both. Meanwhile, back in the terminal, the woman was seated in a security room. Her sunglasses were off now, revealing sharp, restless eyes. She looked around constantly, as if expecting someone else to arrive, but no one did. A female officer approached her gently. Ma'am, you need to tell us your real name. The woman stayed silent. Do you know who the man was whose seat you took? The officer asked. She laughed dryly. Of course I know. It's why I sat there. The officer blinked. So you admit this was planned? Planned? The woman smirked. No, fate. I've been waiting years for this chance. Back in the private room, Keanu sat with the officers. Should I be worried? He asked. The lead officer leaned forward. We're not sure yet, but we've alerted the airport police. You may want to stay off social media for a few days. If she's followed you across airports, it means she knows your travel habits. Keanu nodded quietly. Years of fame had taught him how to keep his life private, but this was different. This was targeted. Personal. And he wasn't the only one in danger. The officers continued their search. They checked security footage, baggage, records, passenger lists. What they found made them pause. This woman hadn't brought luggage, no checked bags, no carry-ons except her oversized purse. And inside that purse? Not a wallet, not a phone, not even a boarding pass. Just an envelope. Inside the envelope was a photo. Of Keanu. Sitting beside a young woman at a charity event, an event from 5 years ago. The female officer showed it to him later that night. Do you remember this girl? She asked. Keanu looked at the photo. Recognition lit his face, but only faintly. She was one of the volunteers, he said slowly. Her name was Marisa, I think. She helped organize the donations that day. She was quiet, respectful, the officer pointed. This woman, the one from the flight, she's her sister. Keanu sat back. What happened to Marisa? He asked. The officer's voice dropped low. She went missing 4 years ago, never found. And her sister believes you were the last person who saw her. Keanu blinked slowly. The room felt colder now. I only met her once. We shook hands. Maybe talked for a few minutes. She was kind. The officer said her sister didn't believe the case was handled properly. She's convinced you knew more than you shared. This may be her way of getting close, confronting you. Or something worse. Keanu stood and walked to the window. I didn't even remember her name until now, he said. But I wish I had. Maybe then I could help. The officer nodded. You still can. Keanu turned. How? The officer handed him a file. By reading what Marisa wrote in her last journal entry. We found it in a box her sister turned in. Keanu opened it. And when he read those words, his hands began to shake. Because what Marisa wrote wasn't about fear or sadness. It was about hope. And it mentioned him by name, but what it said next changed everything. Keanu sat quietly in the small airport room, the folder open in front of him. The journal page inside was slightly faded, the handwriting neat but shaky. He read the words again, slowly this time, letting each one settle into his heart. I met Keanu Reeves today. I didn't expect anything. He didn't act famous. He just listened, really listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone saw me. Not the version I pretend to be, but the real me underneath all the noise. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but for now, I believe in people again. Keanu's eyes stung. He closed the file gently. She was in pain, he said softly. The officer nodded. The journal suggests she was going through something, maybe personal, maybe something darker. And I was the last person who made her feel human, Keanu added. The officer didn't reply. Keanu leaned back. So her sister blamed me when she vanished. Not just blamed, the officer said. She became obsessed. Tracked your public appearances, interviews, charity visits, even your travel bookings. Keanu looked out the window at the darkened runway. But what if she's not trying to hurt me? What if she just wants answers? The officer replied, obsession can look like grief, but grief twisted into blame can be dangerous. Meanwhile, inside the airport holding room, the woman Marissa's sister sat alone. No cuffs, no words. Just silence. A young female detective walked in and placed a bottle of water on the table. You've come a long way, she said. Multiple airports, fake documents, sneaking onto planes. The woman looked up slowly. They gave up on her. Everyone did. Who? The detective asked, though she already knew. Marisa, she whispered. She was my sister. My only family. When she disappeared, they told me it was her choice. That she was an adult. That she probably ran away. But I knew better. The detective sat down. You think Keanu knows what happened to her? The woman didn't answer. Just stared at the wall. Do you blame him? The detective asked gently. The woman finally turned, eyes hard. He could have done more. The detective nodded. Or maybe he just didn't know. Later that evening, Keanu sat in a private lounge, still deep in thought. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even afraid. He was just heavy. He had met so many people over the years. Hundreds of faces. Thousands of handshakes. But every once in a while, someone stayed in his memory. Marisa had been one of those people, kind, quiet, and hopeful. The way she smiled. The way she asked about the shelter pets they were helping that day. The way she had paused before walking away, like she had wanted to say something else, but didn't, single quotes t. What if he had stopped her then? What if he had asked one more question? He would never know. His phone buzzed. It was Rob, his longtime friend and private investigator. I got something, Rob said. Keanu sat up straighter. What is it? A lead on Marisa. The sister may not be entirely wrong. Marisa didn't just disappear. There's a pattern. What kind of pattern? Keanu asked. Rob replied. There were other women from the same volunteer group. 3 of them left town within a year. One was found months later homeless, disoriented, memory gaps. The other 2 haven't been seen since. Keanu's breath caught. Was there an investigation? Sort of, Rob said. Quiet. Not serious. They were all labeled as troubled or unstable. No one followed through. Keanu stood and walked to the window again. But Marisa wasn't unstable. Rob answered, exactly. I think they were targeted. Keanu turned slowly. By who? We don't know yet, Rob said. But the same shelter you visited that day, the one hosting the event, had reports of a staff member acting suspicious. A man, middle-aged, background wasn't fully checked. What's his name? Keanu asked. David Cross, Rob replied. I'm digging into him now. But here's the thing, you took a photo with him that day. Keanu closed his eyes. He could picture it now, the man with the clipboard. The nervous handshake. The one who stood too close to the younger volunteers. You think he's connected? Keanu whispered. I think he's the key, Rob said. And maybe Marissa's sister knew it too. Maybe that's why she's been chasing this truth in. The only way she knew how. The next morning, Keanu asked to speak with her. Not through lawyers. Not through glass. Face to face. The officers allowed it, under supervision. Inside the quiet room, she sat stiffly, arms crossed. Keanu entered slowly. Calm, patient. I'm sorry, she said first. I didn't mean to scare anyone. I didn't know how else to. Get close, Keanu nodded. You didn't scare me. But you did surprise me. She looked down. You were the last one who saw her smile. I read that page in her journal over and over, and I kept thinking, why you? Why did she write about you like that? What did you do that day? Keanu paused, then answered honestly, I listened. She blinked. That's it? I looked her in the eyes, he said. I asked her how she was, and I waited for her to answer. No one else did, I guess. Her hands shook now. I've spent years thinking someone took her, she whispered, but the police stopped caring. Everyone told me to move on, but I knew something was wrong, and I thought, maybe you could have saved her. Keanu sat down across from her. Maybe, he said. Or maybe neither of us could, but now, maybe we still can. She looked up slowly. What do you mean? I've got someone looking into a man named David Cross, he said. He worked at that shelter. I remember his face. And I think he had something to do with your sister's disappearance. Her eyes widened. You believe me? Keanu nodded. Yes. And I'm going to help you find out what really happened to her. A tear slipped down her cheek. Why would you help me? She asked. He leaned forward. Because Marisa deserved the truth. And so do you. But far away, in a small house on the edge of town, a man named David Cross watched the news, his face pale, his hands trembling, on the screen. They showed footage from the airport. The headline read, Flight grounded after confrontation, Keanu Reeves involved in security investigation. Cross turned off the TV. And started packing a bag, because he knew they were coming. Keanu didn't waste a single minute. The moment he left the airport, he called Rob again. They both knew the window to act was shrinking. We've confirmed his current address, Rob said. Small rented house on the edge of town, under a different name. Daniel Crane. Classic move. He's been changing names for years, all legal loopholes. But the photo from that charity event matches. It's him, Keanu spoke firmly. What's our next step? Rob replied, I've already sent everything to the local authorities. But they'll need more. We're dealing with a man who knows how to stay invisible. Keanu thought for a moment. Then we make him visible. He called his team and asked them to pull footage, documents, everything from the day of the charity event. He wanted names of every volunteer, every staff member, every small conversation that had happened that day. Meanwhile, Marisa's sister, her name was Claire, was released under supervision. The court acknowledged she had not intended harm, and her actions, while reckless, were driven by grief and ignored warnings. With Keanu now supporting her search, everything was changing. Claire stood beside him outside the police station, uncertain. You don't have to do this, she said. Keanu looked at her. Yes, I do. They went together to the shelter where it all began. Hope Gate Community Center. The building hadn't changed. The paint still chipped on the window frames. The mural of hands holding each other was still fading on the side wall, but something inside was different. The front desk volunteer, a young woman with kind eyes, greeted them softly. Can I help you? Keanu smiled gently. I'm looking for records from an event here 5 years ago. I was part of a fundraiser. The woman paused. I remember that day. You helped in the kitchen. There were puppies and kids running everywhere. Keanu nodded. And a girl named Marisa volunteered too. The woman's smile faded. Yes, I remember her. Claire stepped forward. I'm her sister. I need to know if anyone from staff had issues with her. The volunteer bit her lip. I probably shouldn't say this, but there were whispers. Marisa mentioned a man made her uncomfortable. But she didn't name anyone. Keanu asked, was David Cross still working here? The woman shook her head. He left weeks after the event. Said he had to move. No one heard from him again. He didn't even pick up his last paycheck. Claire clenched her fists. The woman added, but I kept something. She reached into a drawer behind the desk and pulled out a small folded note. Marisa gave it to me the last day she came in. Said to keep it safe. Claire's hands trembled as she opened the paper. The writing was faded but still readable. If something happens to me, tell them it was him, David. He said I talk too much. He said no one would believe me, but if you're reading this, please, believe me. Tears streamed down Claire's face. Keanu put a gentle hand on her shoulder. We believe you now. And we have her words. That's enough to act. Rob took the note to the district attorney's office. They opened an investigation immediately. Meanwhile, at the small house in the hills, David Cross was erasing digital footprints, wiping devices, burning papers. He moved in silence, like he had practiced this moment many times before. But he didn't. Expect what happened next. Two plainclothes officers knocked at the door. They didn't say much. Just asked a few questions. He smiled calmly. Answered everything politely. But as they turned to leave, one officer looked back and said, By the way, Marisa Hale says hello. David's face cracked. That night he ran. Left everything behind: his fake ID, his car, his belongings. He didn't know Keanu had predicted this. He didn't know Rob had placed a tracker on his old phone. The chase began. For 2 days. David crossed into different counties. Changed outfits, used buses. But everywhere he went, someone was already watching. Finally, in a small motel near the border, they caught him. Officers broke in at dawn. No resistance. He was already on the floor. Hands behind his head. He looked up and said only one thing. I knew she'd find me. Back in Los Angeles, Claire sat outside the courthouse. Keanu handed her a warm cup of coffee. She stared at the building in silence. She trusted the wrong person, Claire whispered. But she left behind the truth. That's what saved her story. Keanu nodded. And you never gave up. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. I thought you forgot about her. That you didn't care. Keanu shook his head. I didn't forget. I just didn't know. Inside, the trial moved quickly. David Cross faced charges not only for Marissa's disappearance, but for 3 other missing women now connected to his timeline. The evidence was overwhelming. The journal, the note, the volunteer list, the footage, and Keanu stood as a witness. He spoke softly, truthfully. I only met Marissa once. But I remember how she made me feel like someone worth listening to. And I think that's what she gave the world, even in the smallest moments. The courtroom was silent. People like Marissa, they're the reason I believe in kindness. And people like Claire, they're the reason truth always finds a way. When it was over and David was led away in cuffs, Claire turned to Keanu. Thank you, she said. Not just for helping me, but for reminding me that good people still exist. Keanu smiled. You reminded me too. But the story wasn't finished yet, because just when everything seemed to calm, a letter arrived at Claire's apartment. No. Return address. No stamp. Inside was a photograph. Marissa. Alive. And standing in front of a church. From a place no one expected. Asterisk. Claire stared at the photo in her hands, unable to speak. Her knees felt weak. Her breath caught in her chest. For so long, she believed Marissa was gone, maybe taken, maybe worse. And now, after all this time, here, she was standing in front of a small church. Alive. Keanu gently took the photo and examined it. It was recent, not staged. Marissa looked older, a little thinner, but very real. She wore a simple dress. Her hair was pulled back. And there was something in her eyes. Peace. Or maybe survival. This doesn't make sense, Claire whispered. We just put the man responsible behind bars. How is this possible? Keanu stayed calm, but his mind was racing. Maybe she got away before he could hurt her. Claire sat down on the couch, her hands still trembling. But why didn't she come back? Why didn't she tell anyone? Maybe she couldn't, Keanu sighed. Or maybe she was afraid no one would believe her. He turned the photo over. Scribbled in pencil on the back were just 4 words. Tell Claire I'm okay. That was it. No name, no location. No explanation. But Keanu noticed something others might have missed. The church in the background had a small sign on the door. The language wasn't English. He took a photo of it with his phone and sent it to Rob. Minutes later, Rob called back. "It's Portuguese," Rob said. "That sign says shelter open to all, Church of St. Joseph." This was taken in a town near São Paulo, Brazil. Claire's eyes widened. "Brazil?" Keanu nodded slowly. "She ran far," Rob added. "I'm checking flight records now. We might be able to track how she got there." Claire stood up, her voice shaking. "I want to go to her." Keanu looked at her. "Then let's go." Within 24 hours, Claire and Keanu were on a plane. No cameras. No press. Just a quiet flight to a small city most people had never heard of. They traveled with only what they needed. Keanu wore a baseball cap low over his eyes, unnoticed. Just the way he liked it. When they arrived, the heat was heavy and the streets were lined with motorcycles and food carts. Rob had already arranged a translator and a driver to take them straight to the church. Claire sat silently in the back seat, clinging to hope like it was the last thing holding her together. The car pulled up to a small yellow church with cracked walls and blooming vines climbing its sides. Children played outside. Music drifted softly through the windows. Keanu stepped out first. He looked around, alert but calm. Then he turned to Claire. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what I'm going to say." "Just say what's in your heart," he said gently. They walked toward the church slowly. A woman came out to greet them, kind eyes, warm smile. She spoke in Portuguese, and the translator explained that she was the caretaker of the shelter. Claire showed her the photo. The woman's smile faded. Then she nodded. She motioned for them to wait and went inside. Seconds felt like hours. Then the door opened again, and there she was. "Marisa, alive." Claire gasped and ran forward. Marisa froze. For a second, tears filling her eyes. Then she stepped out, arms open, and they embraced in the middle of the dusty courtyard. Both sisters sobbed quiet. Raw, honest. Keanu stepped back, letting the moment be theirs. After a long while, Marisa looked up at him. "I remember you," she said in soft English. Keanu nodded, his eyes glassy. "I remember you too." They sat together inside the church. No cameras, no noise, just truth. Marisa spoke slowly. She told them everything. The day after the charity event, she had found disturbing papers in the shelter's office documents about missing girls, strange names, fake files. She tried to report it, but David Cross caught her first. He threatened her, said no one would believe her. She panicked. So she ran. She took a bus, then a train, then found someone who helped her get on a relief flight to South America. She worked odd jobs, volunteered at churches, stayed hidden. "I didn't want to disappear," Marisa said. "I just didn't want to die." Claire wiped her tears. "I thought you were dead for years." "I almost was," Marisa whispered. Keanu asked gently, "Why reach out now?" Marisa looked at him, then her sister. "Because I saw your face on the news, and I realized you hadn't forgotten me. You still cared. That gave me courage." Keanu lowered his head humbly. "You gave us courage first." They stayed in Brazil for 2 more days. Marisa refused to return to the U.S. right away. She said she had more healing to do. But she gave a full statement, recorded with local authorities, that would be used to add new charges against David Cross. Before they left, Claire hugged her one more time. "I'm not letting you go again," she said. Marisa smiled. "This time you won't have to." On the flight home, Claire sat beside Keanu, quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You know, this all started because I took your seat." Keanu chuckled softly. "Actually, you didn't. You took it for a reason." She nodded. "I just wanted to get your attention." "You got it," he said. "And together we found her." But the story still wasn't over. Because as they landed back in Los Angeles, Rob was waiting at the gate. He pulled Keanu aside, his face serious. "We got access to David's hard drive," Rob said. "There's something else. Something worse than we thought." Keanu frowned. "What now?" Rob handed him a file. There were more names, more girls, and they're still missing. Keanu felt the weight of it settle into his chest. Then, "We don't stop here," he said. "We keep going." Because the seat may have been taken by accident. But what it led to was no accident at all. It was a mission. Keanu stood outside the courthouse weeks later, his eyes steady as reporters gathered around. He wasn't here for a movie. He wasn't promoting a project. He was here for something more important. Inside that building, the man known as David Cross or Daniel Crane, or whatever name he used last, was facing trial. The charges had grown. 5 missing women, 3 confirmed survivors, and years of covered-up movements between shelters, volunteer programs, and small towns. All hidden in plain sight. And it all began with a seat. Keanu had returned not just to speak, but to listen. He was helping fund a legal task force that would search for every missing woman connected to the shelters David once worked with. Rob was on the team. Claire too. And Marisa, she had officially joined as a witness, offering her voice, her story, her truth. The courtroom was packed. Keanu sat quietly in the 3rd row, beside Claire. They had agreed to remain low-key, but nothing about this trial would stay small. The judge entered. The room stood. Then silence fell as testimony began. First, it was Marisa. She walked to the stand, her back straight, her hands only slightly shaking. She looked directly at the man who once tried to silence her. "You told me no one would care," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But they did, and they still do. And I'm not afraid of you anymore." The courtroom listened without a word. Claire wiped her eyes. Then came the evidence documents, journal entries, anonymous letters from other victims who had finally found courage. And then came Keanu. He stepped up as a character witness, though he never asked for that title. "I don't know how to describe what happened that day on the plane," he said to the court. "But I believe it was meant to happen. I believe a seat was taken not by mistake, but by purpose, and it led us here. To truth." His voice stayed calm. "If a stranger sitting in the wrong place is all it took to open the door to justice, then let that be a reminder small actions matter. Listening matters. Showing up matters." When he stepped down, even the court officers looked moved. In the end, David Cross was sentenced to multiple life terms. His past caught up with him. And finally, the names he tried to bury were spoken out loud, one by one, with honor, with dignity. Outside the courthouse, Claire stood in front of a group of young women, some who had known Marisa, others who had once been afraid to speak. "We are not invisible," she said into the microphone. "And we are never too late to be found." Marisa joined her, standing in silence, hand in hand. Keanu stayed in the background, as always. A quiet figure watching change happen. A reporter approached him. "Why did you get involved?" she asked. Keanu paused. "Because a girl once wrote that I made her feel seen," he said. "And I didn't even know it. So now, I try to see people more clearly, that's all." The reporter lowered her camera. "And what now?" she asked. Keanu looked out at the crowd of survivors, supporters, and strangers who had become something more. "Now," he said, "we keep listening." Months passed. Marisa started working with a global foundation for women's safety. Claire launched a non-profit in her sister's name. Rob expanded the investigation to 3 more countries. Leads continued to surface, and with each one, new names were added, not to a missing persons list, but to a list of those finally heard. And Keanu, he returned to his quiet life. But something inside him had changed forever. He didn't stop helping. He funded shelters anonymously. He visited recovery homes. He sat with people who felt invisible. And every once in a while, Someone would come up and say, "Thank you for what you did," and he'd smile gently and say, "It wasn't just me." Because the truth is, sometimes the smallest twist of fate, like someone taking the wrong seat on a plane, can open a door, a door to healing, a door to justice, a door to something that makes the world just a little bit kinder.